Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. An 86-year-old man, a luxury Maserati, a quiet California town, and a split-second incident that has once again thrust one of America's most well-known political families into the national spotlight. On the 17th of July, 2026, prosecutors in Napa County formally charged Paul Pelosi, the husband of former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, with misdemeanor hit and run after a crash that happened earlier this month. While no one was injured, investigators say the case raises important questions about legal responsibility, accountability, and a driving history that has already drawn national attention in the past. At first glance, it might seem like a routine traffic case, but because of who Paul Pelosi is, and because of his previous driving-related legal troubles, this incident has become far more than just another accident report. In this video, we'll walk through exactly what happened, what investigators say they found, why prosecutors decided to file criminal charges, and what could happen next. We'll also examine the legal issues, the public reaction, and the broader debate this case has reignited across the country. So, what exactly happened? The story begins on the afternoon of Friday, the 3rd of July, 2026, only days after the 4th of July holiday weekend. Paul Pelosi was driving his Maserati convertible through the quiet streets of Yountville, California, a small town in the heart of Napa Valley known for its wineries, upscale restaurants, and peaceful neighborhoods. At approximately 2:30 p.m., according to investigators, Pelosi's Maserati struck an unoccupied Tesla that was legally parked along Yount Street. The collision wasn't minor. The impact pushed the parked Tesla onto the curb, leaving visible damage to both vehicles. Fortunately, because the Tesla was empty, no one was hurt. But what allegedly happened in the moments immediately after the crash is what transformed a property damage accident into a criminal case. Before we continue, if you appreciate fact-based reporting without sensationalism, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us continue bringing you detailed coverage of important stories like this. Because according to investigators, the collision itself wasn't the biggest problem. It was what Paul Pelosi allegedly did next. According to the Napa County Sheriff's Office and the District Attorney's Office, the real controversy didn't begin with the collision itself. It began with what allegedly happened immediately afterward. Investigators say Paul Pelosi did not stop at the scene. Authorities allege he did not exchange insurance information, leave a written note for the owner of the parked Tesla, or contact law enforcement to report the crash. Instead, prosecutors say he continued driving away. A short time later, sheriff's deputies located Pelosi's damaged Maserati nearby. The visible damage on the vehicle became an important piece of the investigation. When deputies questioned him, Pelosi reportedly acknowledged that he believed he had struck something. However, according to law enforcement, he said he wasn't certain what he had hit. Investigators then compared the physical evidence from both vehicles, examined the crash scene, and reviewed the available information before reaching their conclusions. One important fact should also be made clear. No one was injured in this incident. The Tesla was unoccupied at the time of the collision, and authorities have also confirmed that alcohol was not a factor in this case. That distinguishes this incident from Pelosi's widely reported DUI case several years ago. After reviewing the evidence gathered by investigators, Napa County District Attorney Allison Haley announced criminal charges on the 17th of July, 2026. Pelosi now faces a misdemeanor hit-and-run charge involving property damage, along with a separate traffic infraction for an unsafe turning movement, which prosecutors believe contributed to the collision. Under California Vehicle Code Section 20002, any driver involved in a crash that damages another person's property has a legal obligation to stop, identify themselves, and provide the required information. Even when the other vehicle is parked and unoccupied, leaving the scene without fulfilling those legal responsibilities can result in criminal charges. If convicted, the misdemeanor charge carries potential penalties of up to 6 months in county jail, a fine of up to $1,000, or both, although the actual outcome depends on the court and the specific circumstances of the case. At this stage, these are allegations filed by prosecutors, and the case will ultimately be decided through the legal process. And as investigators continued putting the pieces together, another question quickly emerged. Was this simply an isolated mistake or part of a much larger pattern that had followed Paul Pelosi for years? The investigation moved quickly. After reviewing the evidence collected by sheriff's deputies, prosecutors concluded there was enough to move forward with criminal charges. Investigators pointed to several key pieces of evidence, including the damage on Pelosi's Maserati that allegedly matched the parked Tesla, his reported statement that he knew he had struck something, and the allegation that he left the scene without meeting the legal requirements expected after a collision. Not long after the charges were announced, a spokesperson for the Pelosi family released a statement saying that Paul Pelosi had apologized to the owner of the Tesla and intended to pay for all property damage resulting from the crash. His first court appearance, known as an arraignment, has been scheduled for the 14th of August, 2026, where he is expected to enter a plea and formally respond to the charges. But this case has attracted far more attention than a typical misdemeanor traffic incident. The reason is simple. Paul Pelosi isn't just another California driver. For decades, he has been known as the husband of Nancy Pelosi, one of the most influential figures in modern American politics and the former Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives. The Pelosi family owns both a home and a vineyard in Napa Valley, making the region a regular part of their lives. That public profile means even relatively minor legal cases quickly become national headlines. However, there's another reason this story has generated so much discussion. This isn't the first time Paul Pelosi has faced legal scrutiny behind the wheel. To understand why many people immediately connected this case to the past, we have to go back to May 2022. That year, Paul Pelosi was involved in a serious DUI crash in Napa County while driving his Porsche. Authorities later determined that his blood alcohol concentration was more than twice California's legal limit, and the collision left another driver injured. Pelosi later pleaded guilty to misdemeanor DUI, causing injury. The court sentenced him to 5 days in jail, which he served through home detention, along with 3 years of probation, a court-approved DUI education program, and additional legal penalties. The case dominated national headlines and sparked widespread debate. Critics questioned whether someone connected to one of the country's most powerful political families was being treated differently, while others argued that the legal process had followed the same procedures applied in similar cases. Before we continue, if you're finding this breakdown informative, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. We cover major legal cases and breaking news with verified facts and balanced reporting, so you never miss an important update. With that 2022 conviction already part of the public record, many Americans began asking the same question. Is this latest incident simply an unfortunate accident, or does it point to a longer pattern that deserves closer attention? The 2026 hit-and-run case isn't being viewed in isolation. According to public reports, Paul Pelosi has received multiple traffic citations over the past decade, including speeding violations and other driving-related infractions. While traffic tickets are relatively common for many drivers, critics argue that, When viewed alongside his previous DUI conviction and the latest criminal charge, they paint a concerning picture. For some observers, the issue extends beyond one individual. They believe the case has reignited an important national conversation about older drivers and road safety. At 86 years old, Pelosi's age has become part of that discussion, with some calling for stricter medical evaluations or more frequent driving assessments for senior drivers who have a history of traffic-related incidents. California already has procedures that allow older drivers to be reevaluated under certain circumstances. Those reviews can be triggered by factors such as medical conditions, referrals from physicians, or recommendations from law enforcement. However, exactly how those rules are applied can vary from case to case. At the same time, many experts caution against making broad assumptions based solely on a driver's age. Millions of older Americans continue to drive safely every day, and transportation safety advocates often stress that each case should be evaluated on its own facts rather than age alone. Meanwhile, the latest charge has also fueled a political debate. On social media platforms and in political commentary, some critics describe the case as another example of elite privilege, questioning why prosecutors took nearly 2 weeks to announce charges after the July 3 crash. Others disagree with that interpretation. They point out that investigators needed time to collect evidence, review the case, and determine whether criminal charges were appropriate. From that perspective, prosecutors followed the normal legal process before filing the misdemeanor complaint. Supporters of the Pelosi family have also emphasized several key facts. No one was injured, authorities found no evidence that alcohol played a role, and the family has publicly stated that Paul Pelosi intends to pay for the damage caused to the parked Tesla. In the end, public opinion remains deeply divided. Depending on political views and personal perspectives, people see this case in very different ways. But beyond the headlines and online arguments, one question remains at the center of the investigation. Exactly what does California law require after a crash, and why do prosecutors believe those legal requirements were violated in this case? To understand why prosecutors filed criminal charges, it's important to look at what California law actually requires after a traffic collision. The case centers on California Vehicle Code Section 20002, which governs hit-and-run incidents involving property damage. Under this law, any driver involved in a collision that damages another person's property has a legal duty to stop at the scene, identify themselves, and provide the required contact and insurance information. If the owner of the damaged property isn't present, as in this case involving a parked vehicle, the driver is generally expected to leave the necessary information in a visible location and notify the appropriate authorities. Simply driving away without taking those steps can result in a misdemeanor criminal charge, even if no one is injured. Because this incident involved property damage only, prosecutors filed it as a misdemeanor rather than a felony. Under California law, felony hit-and-run cases typically involve crashes that result in serious injuries or death. But the hit-and-run allegation isn't the only issue prosecutors intend to present. Paul Pelosi has also been cited for an unsafe turning movement, suggesting investigators believe the collision may have been caused by an improper maneuver before the impact occurred. As the case moves through the court system, prosecutors are expected to rely on several pieces of evidence. Those may include photographs documenting the damage to both vehicles, physical evidence collected at the scene, witness statements if available, any relevant body camera or surveillance footage, and Pelosi's own reported statements to law enforcement officers. The defense, meanwhile, is expected to present its own interpretation of the events. Pelosi's attorneys may argue that he was genuinely unaware of what he had struck, or that there was no deliberate intent to flee the scene. Depending on the circumstances presented in court, they could also raise questions about confusion, perception, or other factors they believe are relevant to the case. If the court ultimately finds him guilty, a judge could also consider factors such as his age, overall health, prior record, acceptance of responsibility, and the specific facts of the incident when determining an appropriate sentence. For now, however, it's important to remember that these are allegations, and the charges have not yet been proven in court. Like every criminal defendant in the United States, Paul Pelosi is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty through the legal process. But while the courtroom battle is still ahead, the court of public opinion has already reached its own conclusions, and the reaction has been impossible to ignore. As news of the charges became public, the reaction was almost immediate. Across social media platforms, including X, formerly known as Twitter, the case spread rapidly. Hashtags related to Paul Pelosi and the alleged hit and run began circulating as thousands of users weighed in with their opinions. Some shared clips and headlines from his 2022 DUI case, while others focused entirely on the latest allegations. For many Americans, the discussion quickly expanded beyond one crash. Some users argued that the incident highlights the need for a broader conversation about senior driving safety, especially when drivers have a history of traffic-related incidents. Road safety experts have long noted that crash risk can increase for some older drivers due to changes in vision, reaction time, or certain medical conditions. At the same time, experts also emphasize that millions of older Americans continue to drive safely every day, and age alone should not be used to judge an individual's ability behind the wheel. That balance between protecting public safety and respecting individual independence has become one of the central issues raised by this case. The political dimension has added another layer of attention. Although Nancy Pelosi is no longer Speaker of the House, she remains one of the most recognizable and influential figures in the Democratic Party. Because of that visibility, legal matters involving members of her family often receive intense national media coverage and quickly become part of broader political debates. Even so, it's important to separate political opinion from the legal process. The criminal charges in this case were filed by the Napa County District Attorney's Office after reviewing evidence collected during the investigation. The publicly reported facts come from law enforcement statements and court filings, not from anonymous political sources or partisan speculation. As the case continues, the focus will ultimately shift away from online debate and toward the courtroom, where evidence, not public opinion, will determine the outcome. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this fact-based coverage, please take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Your support helps us continue producing balanced, in-depth reports on the stories that matter most. With public attention now fixed on the case, the next question is the most important one of all. What happens next? And what could Paul Pelosi face when he appears in court? With the investigation complete and charges now officially filed, the focus shifts to the courtroom. Paul Pelosi is scheduled to appear before the Napa County Superior Court on the 14th of August, 2026, for his arraignment. During that hearing, he will be formally advised of the charges against him and asked to enter a plea. Like any criminal defendant, Pelosi has several legal options. He may choose to plead guilty, no contest, or not guilty. Each decision could lead the case down a very different path. If the matter is resolved early, the case could potentially end with penalties such as a fine, probation, community service, or other court-ordered conditions, depending on the judge's decision and the specific facts presented. A full trial also remains a possibility. However, legal experts note that many misdemeanor property damage cases are resolved before reaching that stage, although the final outcome will depend on negotiations between the prosecution and the defense, as well as any new evidence that may emerge. But this case isn't only about one court appearance. It has also sparked a broader public discussion about driver safety and aging in America. Some people believe incidents involving older drivers should prompt states to adopt more frequent medical evaluations or driving assessments after a certain age. Several European countries already require periodic health checks or license renewals for senior drivers under specific rules. In the United States, however, the approach is far less uniform. Driver licensing requirements vary from state to state. In California, older drivers may be referred for additional evaluation based on factors such as medical information, physician reports, or referrals from law enforcement. There is no automatic road test simply because a person reaches a certain age. Supporters of stricter testing argue that high-profile cases like this could encourage lawmakers to re-examine existing policies in an effort to reduce future accidents. Others caution that any reforms should be based on evidence and individual driving ability, not age alone. One thing is certain: the outcome of this case could influence conversations far beyond a single courtroom in Napa County. Because while Paul Pelosi prepares to face a judge, many Americans are asking an even bigger question: what lessons should be taken from this incident, and what does it ultimately say about accountability, responsibility, and equal treatment under the law? While much of the national attention has focused on Paul Pelosi, it's important not to overlook the person whose property was damaged. For the owner of the parked Tesla, the incident meant dealing with vehicle repairs, insurance paperwork, unexpected expenses, and the time and inconvenience that often follow a traffic collision. Although no one was physically injured, property damage cases can still create significant disruption for those involved. At the heart of this case is a simple legal principle. Whether someone is an everyday driver or closely connected to one of the most recognizable political families in the United States, the same traffic laws apply to everyone. That principle is one of the foundations of the American justice system, and this case will ultimately be judged through that legal process. Looking back at the timeline, the key facts are clear. On the 3rd of July, 2026, prosecutors allege that Paul Pelosi's Maserati struck a legally parked Tesla in Yountville, California. Authorities say he then left the scene without fulfilling the legal obligations required after a property damage collision. Following an investigation by the Napa County Sheriff's Office, prosecutors formally filed misdemeanor hit-and-run charges, along with a traffic infraction for an alleged unsafe turning movement. Although this is not the most serious category of criminal offense under California law, the case has attracted widespread attention because it follows Paul Pelosi's 2022 DUI conviction, prompting renewed public discussion about driving responsibility, accountability, and public confidence in the legal system. As the case now moves through the courts, the legal process, not public opinion, will determine the outcome. Evidence will be examined. Both sides will have the opportunity to present their arguments, and the court will decide whether the charges have been proven. We will continue following every major development, including the August 14 arraignment, any future court hearings, and the final resolution of the case, as new verified information becomes available. And before we wrap up, there's one final takeaway from this case that goes far beyond Paul Pelosi himself. As this case continues through the legal system, one message stands above everything else. The law is designed to apply equally to everyone, regardless of age, wealth, public status, or political connections. Cases like this remind us that every driver has a legal responsibility after a collision. Even when no one is injured, stopping at the scene, reporting the incident, and providing the required information are not simply good practices, they are legal obligations. At the same time, it's important to remember that Paul Pelosi has been charged, not convicted. Like every defendant in the American justice system, he is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty in court. The upcoming legal proceedings will determine how this case is ultimately resolved. Beyond the courtroom, this incident has also sparked a broader conversation about senior driving, public accountability, and whether current licensing policies should be reviewed. Those are debates that extend far beyond a single traffic case and are likely to continue long after this story leaves the headlines. We will continue monitoring every verified development, including the August 14 court appearance, any future hearings, and the final outcome of the case. If there are significant updates, we'll bring you a complete and fact-based report. If you found this breakdown informative, please take a moment to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our in-depth coverage of major legal cases and breaking news. We'd also like to hear from you. Do you believe states should require more frequent driving evaluations for elderly drivers, or should licensing decisions continue to be based on individual ability rather than age? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Stay informed, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next report. Overall, in 9 parts, script ka flow ab kafi, strong high cinematic intro, logical progression, balanced legal reporting, natural cliffhangers, or end main, clear disclaimer, or CTA. Ye style USA News, documentary audience K. Lee, professional or retention-friendly